My goodness, ladies and gentlemen, what a week it has been. Bethesda has been leaked all over the place. The UK is getting prepared for a royal wedding. Eurovision dropped. Your boy Gambino's dropping hot bars. But none of that matters. Because in 3 weeks' time, Gaming Christmas rolls around again, as it does every year. And that's why we are dropping our predictions today. Lewis, how are you feeling?
Yeah, doing very well. Doing very well.
Fucking hell! Ah,
Oh,
that was very loud. That was fun. Uh, are you ready to go?
yes.
Have you consulted your crystal ball?
Yes, I've something that like people should know is that for a long time I've been doing nothing but reading about games and game news.
Hmm.
So I feel like I'm pretty well up on what's actually going to happen.
Interesting. I feel quite the same. I don't have a crystal ball, unfortunately. I broke it when I moved into this flat, which I didn't see coming. So, all right. So we're going to go in order of conference, i.e., we're going to go in chronological order. The first one that happens to the last one that happens, and then some additional stuff as well, because there's some stuff that just doesn't quite fit in anywhere else. So we're starting with EA, and we're also going to involve all of your ideas and your comments because we got them from you as well. Thank you so much if you did comment on that thread. We had some lovely thoughts and suggestions. Let's do E3. Lewis, I'm going to start with EA's conference. Ready?
Yes.
Here we go. Prediction number one: EA's conference bombs hugely. There's lots of multiplayer focus, none of the interesting single player stuff they've been doing in sports games recently. And because Battlefield is said to be similar to Battlefield 1, there's not much impressive stuff from that either. That's my first prediction.
I think that's very fair. I mean, I've got to be honest. I feel like EA normally bombs, um, but yeah, I reckon we're going to see some interesting things actually. So I'm going to say that we're going to see a theoretical Dragon Age 4.
Interesting.
Yeah.
All right. Prediction number two: they do not announce a new EA indie game.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That is very interesting.
But my final prediction is that they do save it at the last minute with their one last thing, which is the announcement of a new Star Wars game, and that Star Wars game is a revival of Star Wars Bounty Hunter.
Ah, interesting. I could see that. I could see that.
The way when I was putting these predictions together, I was thinking, what's Star Wars but could kind of work like Overwatch? Because they've been tracing that pretty hard. And like four-player co-op, mission structures, kind of payload based, but not like Team Fortress payload based. Bounty Hunter would work super well for that. So I could definitely see that being a thing that happens. Just to give you a bit of context, the way I do my predictions is the first two will be totally realistic. The third one, if it happens, is crazy impressive. So don't expect that one to be true. So like Bounty Hunter, I could see happening, but also, probably not. That's how my predictions work.
Yeah, I think we'll see something in Star Wars at any rate. It's kind of been suggested quite heavily that we're going to see something single player Star Wars game.
Ooh.
Yeah, I think single player, but I don't know. I reckon we're going to also be seeing a Plants vs Zombies 3, Garden Warfare 3.
Yeah.
It seems fairly likely that they're going to update that again. Um, somebody wants it, I guess. They'll have another zombie on stage. If you remember, it was disastrous and not funny at all. But yeah, it's EA.
I actually think the guy who came on stage was kind of fun, like in a typical E3 trash way.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. Um, I think you're right though, and we'll see. We might see some Anthem. I imagine that's on its way. Can't. Yeah, I think we'll see Anthem. Maybe like a big part of it. I don't know.
Hmm.
You've got to hope that at some point we see something about that because it's meant to be BioWare's final thing, and like hopefully not the end of BioWare. But yeah, yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, people agreed with us in the comments as well. So just to be clear, my three predictions are very bad conference, no multiplayer, no EA game, but Star Wars Bounty Hunter, and yours are.
Yes, mine are Dragon Age 4. We'll see Plants vs Zombie Garden Warfare 3, and something similar, but also Star Wars.
Cool. In the comments, we had people such as Ryan Shaw and Jake Shipley, both friends of the show, saying that they'd like to hear more from EA about Star Wars as well. Seems pretty clear that EA have a bit to deliver with Star Wars still, and that people want it from them. So fair enough. Okay, now we get on to what I think could be super interesting. The next conference to happen chronologically will be Microsoft. So, here are my 3 predictions. Gearbox take the stage to announce Borderlands 3. The game is out this year.
Okay. Interesting. Something's been rumoured for a while.
I'll tell you this, if I were a betting man, I would put money on this right now.
Okay.
I think the evidence is absolutely stacked up that this is happening.
Okay, all right, that's interesting.
Randy Pitchford has gone on, I don't know whether it's happening, I'd put money that Borderlands 3 happens this E3. If it's at Microsoft, that's a good thing. If it's not, that's, it's still Borderlands, right? So, Randy Pitchford's gone on the record a couple of times and said, no, we're not doing this. No, we're not part with Microsoft. But he's also been very coy about the way he does it. So yeah, I think that's absolutely happening this time.
Okay.
My second prediction is Xbox unveils a host of new exclusive games for the next 2.5 years. The games include Gears of War 5, ReCore 2, a new Perfect Dark, a new Fable, and at least one new Forza game, and Battletoads. Gears and ReCore 2 are out this year, and a Halo 6 tease closes the show.
All right, so we're having a bit of a big mic drop from Microsoft.
I think they need it.
Yes, I mean, you mentioned about how your third prediction was out there.
Uh-huh.
This is kind of the one that I would put in the third place at the moment. I mean, I don't know.
Really?
Well, I haven't read your third.
Okay.
But yeah, okay.
I think that we know these games are being worked on. They know we know these games are being worked on. Phil is not doing a very good job of... He's talking the talk but not walking the walk, and he knows this year has to change things. Because the year he's got stacked up against him, we know what Sony have. We've said it, and especially with the details that have come out this week, I imagine the conference that they had planned before Sony's details this week is drastically different to the one they'll see at E3.
Okay.
My third prediction, there's no way this happens, but it would be amazing prediction, is From Software join the stage to announce a new game. It is the game we saw at the Game Awards, but it's a brand new IP with a tagline, Shadows Die Twice. It's got a heavy Japanese influence and leaning, and its first year is exclusive to Xbox.
So, I mean, you know how you mentioned putting money on the things?
Yeah.
This is the one I would put money on not happening, pretty much. I mean, there's a fair amount of evidence against it.
I mean, it's difficult because what we saw from that game is so just insubstantial that it could literally be anything. It does look quite Bloodborne-y, but then it also very much doesn't look Bloodborne-y. There's really no way to tell what the game is. I think it's not Bloodborne, purely because they've been so ardent, Miyazaki especially, they've been so ardent about stepping away from the Souls formula. And with Japan Studio, I think Japan Studio is supporting Ghost of Tsushima, I think. I might be wrong on that one. But I just think, I don't know, I could see Bloodborne 2 being late cycle, early next-gen cycle rather than this year.
Okay. I'll have a talk about what Shadows Die Twice is later. Okay, yeah, very interesting predictions. I think you'll be lucky, but we'll see. I think my first prediction, my most likely prediction, I think, is that they'll not be able to do what your second prediction is, I guess, and have such a big impact of the thing that instead the focus of their entire conference will be on Game Pass. Not their entire conference, but there'll be a big focus on Game Pass and kind of reselling that idea, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
Remarketing it as Game Pass, the next big thing. You can subscribe to us and get games. They'll start by announcing some really big things, 10 new games on Game Pass, and they're all kind of the biggest things that were on the Xbox 360 or something. I think it will probably not help the people who are kind of anti-Microsoft at the moment, or the people that are kind of down on them. But I think that's kind of the line that they're going to go down.
Okay.
Because it is something that actually does market the Xbox quite well.
Yeah.
I think 2, we see Crackdown 3. But it looks really different. It looks worlds apart from what it was before. Maybe they've changed the style from being quite something that's quite cartoon cell shading style and kind of going to more realistic style. Not entirely, but somewhere in between.
So to stop you for a second, did you see the op-ed that came out today that basically says that?
Oh, really?
Yeah, there's been I think, I haven't actually read it the full way through, but there's been a big opinion piece that came out today that said that basically what we thought of as a huge delay for the game has actually been the impetus by Phil Spencer to hold it back to make it right. And that it looks drastically different in terms of both quality and how it runs to how it did the last time we saw it. Apparently, the scale and scope of the game is bigger than we expected, and the online multiplayer is up and running and working.
Yeah. I mean, I could see it. I could see it if that's kind of what they've done by pushing it back. Because, at the end of the day, you have to appreciate that Crackdown 3 is literally Xbox's kind of biggest game right now. That's its biggest hitter, and the problem is that what we saw at last year's E3 just didn't make it. It wasn't something that was comparable to the big hitters that Sony had. It looks like if you've watched some of the gameplay videos, it looks like a lot of fun for 15 minutes or an hour.
Yeah.
So I kind of hope it does come out and it does have this bigger scope that you talk about.
Yeah,
I think that would be really good.
You're right. It looks very comparable to a Crackdown game in that it's very fun. Or it looks very fun, at least, but they haven't exactly been the deepest or most, socially woke games there are. It's been a fun arcade kind of thing.
And the important thing, the second part of this, is that it's on Game Pass right now after the show. And I think this is ridiculously likely. I think this is like my probably one of my most likely predictions, I think.
Okay.
So it's live on Game Pass right after the show.
So your Borderlands 3 is Crackdown?
Yeah, I think so. I think the thing is that you have to appreciate that this game, I mean, it's kind of, your op-ed piece puts another angle on it, but, 9 months ago it was delayed. It was meant to come out like 6 months ago. I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, what the hell? Something must have been different, and we haven't heard of it. No one's mentioned it for a long time now. So I have to think that at this point, when they mention it, it's out, it's done. Maybe it comes a little bit later. Part of me thinks that there's a chance it could be exclusive to Game Pass, which would be an interesting idea. Yeah, so it's literally only on Game Pass, no physical copies, because it will just push people to use the subscription, and people have already used their free subscriptions. So people are going to have to pay for it.
If that happens, I will make some kind of bet with you off air.
Okay.
And your final one?
Oh, I don't really have a crazy one. Fable 4. We see an early cinematic trailer, no gameplay. It's kind of pitched towards the Xbox 2. Or something that's coming out later. I'm talking like a Metroid Prime 4 announcement. It's literally just we hear some music, Fable 4 appears on the screen, and then that's it, everyone kind of loses their mind for a bit, but that's kind of all we get.
We get a trailer, the font fades in,
yeah.
Fable 4, there's some beautiful music behind it, and then just the face of Peter Molyneux fades on screen. And the conference ends.
Yeah, Peter Molyneux comes out. He's still doing Fable 4.
Peter Molyneux comes out with another massive Curiosity Cube. And he's like, by the time we've got to the bottom of this cube, Xbox might have some games.
My fourth announcement. Peter Molyneux comes out on stage. Everyone loses their mind thinking oh my god, he actually is going to be in charge of Fable 4. And then he announces Curiosity 2 or something.
All right. Okay, your next conference is Bethesda. Bethesda, of course, were pretty screwed this week by the big Walmart leak. which apparently is still like tentative. This is still speculative, so we'll see what that means. My first prediction is Rage 2 is absolutely announced. In fact, it will probably be announced on the day you're listening to this podcast if their marketing is anything to go by. However, here's something interesting. Lots of people have been expecting Bethesda to announce Starfield this year. Starfield has been in development for a long while, and it's been referred to as like a sci-fi RPG, kind of their answer to a sci-fi version of Elder Scrolls or Fallout, I guess. People are thinking it's going to be set in like maybe space, maybe on a different world, maybe something like that. I think Rage 2 is Starfield. I think it's a very, very different looking game than the first Rage. I think it's maybe set in a sci-fi world, and I don't think Starfield is the name of this game. I think it's Rage.
That's very interesting. And actually, I can kind of see... So, some context to it is that Bethesda's Twitter have been putting out lots of different, very cryptic, random kind of random images. And like, an interesting thing that kind of works for you is that one of the images is like a rocket going somewhere. And all of the other images are very, like quite consistently and quite clearly Rage in some form.
The one they tweeted out today is the most specific one. It's got a Mad Max style grunt pulling his lips open to bare his teeth in like a desert looking wasteland, and his teeth say the reveal date of the day of this podcast. They started it by when the Walmart leak happened. They wrote on the image of the Walmart leak with the day of the release and like an anarchy symbol and hey, Walmart, get it right. I think this is going to be a very different game. I think it's going to have that kind of anarchistic tone the whole way through, almost like a cross between Borderlands and Destiny and the Elder Scrolls. I think this is Starfield is Rage 2.
See, I think I could see where you're going with it. I could see that. Part of me worries for Rage 2 that, like, I don't know, like, the way they're marketing it makes me think that it's going to be, like, borrowing the humor. This is something that's fine for you, but it's going to be borrowing the humor from Borderlands, maybe borrowing the humor a little bit from something like Sunset Overdrive. And, like, I'm just not sure about that. Like, it's just the way that they're marketing it makes me feel like that's kind of the line that they're going down.
Yeah, I agree with you. They've got a very kind of self-aware Deadpool kind of tone to the way they're marketing things. And that can work if you get it right, i.e. I would argue Borderlands, Sunset Overdrive, Deadpool. But if you get it wrong, i.e. Lollipop Chainsaw, i.e. Saints Row some of the time, i.e. lots of crap B games that have not quite made it, can go very wrong. Number 2. This is one I think is likely, but the minutiae of it will sort of make the difference. Elder Scrolls 6 is named. They say it's being worked on, but we hear nothing more from it. They just tell us they're making it.
Okay. I can see that. So instead of the kind of...
Literally like a Metroid 4 reveal from last year. It's just a title card, a nice thing, and then somebody walks on stage and says, hey, this is happening, chill your boots, see you later.
Drop the wreck.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, okay.
And my final crazy prediction, and I actually kind of think we might be seeing this, Bethesda have come out and said that this year's showcase is probably going to be the longest they've ever done. The last time they did a very long showcase was because they had a big, big Fallout game to reveal. This year's third massive prediction, Fallout New Vegas 2. It might not be called New Vegas 2, it might be New Boston, New Jersey, New England, wherever, but it's a spiritual sequel to New Vegas, and it's out this year.
Interesting. Very interesting, actually. Yeah. You have some great predictions.
Thank you.
Not going to happen, but I mean, they're great. So, I'll be honest, I'm a bit short on Bethesda. I think, like, you're right, they came out and said that they're going to have a really long show, and I'm kind of quality, quantity. It does make me wonder a bit. I still believe in Starfield. I still think we're getting Starfield as a separate thing from Rage. Mostly just because I don't think that they're doing an Elder Scrolls game, and they've recently done a Fallout game. So in terms of Bethesda's main studio, I just think that it must be something else. They've said before in interviews that like they're doing 2 games before the next Elder Scrolls. And that was kind of, for their in-house studio. So I think most likely it's going to be something else. If it's not Starfield, it's going to be something else. And whether that thing is Rage 2, it could be. We don't necessarily know who's making that.
Yes, that we don't.
Yeah, and that's kind of interesting.
Oh man, this year's gonna be good. I can feel it.
For my next predictions, I'll be honest, something that's fairly likely to happen, which is the Prey DLC of some sort. Maybe even something that kind of stands on its own. And they kind of like, is it maybe a standalone title? I think. I'm not too sure about that. I think like there's a chance that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
And there's one that's been going around, but the Rage 2 thing has kind of like chucked everyone's expectations apart. And one of the things that was being said all the time was that Doom 2 was going to be announced. And I'm going to put it in there, but like, there's a chance that Doom 2 is actually Rage 2. And like,
whoa, that would be really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, like, you know, instead of what we kind of thought. So, I think Doom 2 is probably the least likely thing at this stage because of the Rage 2 leak. Like, it's kind of put that to another side, but we'll see.
Quick aside, if Starfield is a different thing, I think it will probably look something like the original Prey 2.
Oh, yeah.
I
could see that.
Dope. Oh, man.
Yeah, I could see that. That's a very interesting idea, and I could see that. And that would be a very good way of potentially winning E3.
Oh, damn. Okay, yeah. All right. Your next conference is Square Enix. Now, this is really interesting because Square Enix haven't done a conference in a long time. It's been, I think, 3 years since their last one. And a lot of games have come out for Square Enix in the time that's passed. So this really could be a big sort of putting their slate down in the ground and showing us what to expect. I'm going to start with my first two predictions. My first one is Just Cause 4 is announced. It probably comes out in the next 9 months, and it's shit when it releases.
Oh, yeah. All right.
But I do think Just Cause has a lot of potential. I played 3 recently for about 15 hours. The game was, when it was good, it was really good. And I think if the devs had time to work on it, they could make a very, very good game. But Square Enix isn't the kind of thing to give time. So we'll see on that one. My second prediction is we're going to get a big leak of information about Kingdom Hearts 3, including a release date, including a bunch of new worlds, including some gameplay, including a bunch of stuff on different platforms. I think we're going to have a big old Kingdom Hearts 3 blowout. My third, totally unlikely one, is Chrono Break is officially announced, and we get to see that game after, I think, 7 years.
Yeah, okay. I think mine are, I don't know. So my first is that Life is Strange 2 is announced. It's something that's looking quite likely to happen eventually. We still don't really know if they're going to try and cash in on the kind of the fan base of Life is Strange 1, or if they're just going to, new story, new characters is what they said at the start, but that was so long ago, and before kind of like there's a lot of there's a lot of a movement behind Life is Strange 1. And like, but considering the style of that game of like high school kids, it's unlikely that Life is Strange 2 will appeal if it's something else.
Yeah.
It kind of makes me wonder exactly like what business move they're going to do on that. So yeah, I think we see whatever Yoko Taro is up to now. It might be a little bit early, I'll be honest, but I think it's something we're going to see eventually. Because, Nier Automata, I think, like, blew all expectations on terms of, what they expected to sell was nowhere near what it did. Was so much lower than what it did. So I think, like, in terms of that, it's bound to get something. And, I've written here that Final Fantasy 15 gets ported to something, is my third prediction, because they ported it to a mobile phone, and, like you can play it on your mobile, you literally can. And that was kind of a weird thing to happen. But I'm going to put another one in here, which is that we see the Avengers game that we know Square is meant to be working on. Yeah. I think it's another thing that's just like, we know that they're doing a conference to it, so expect big things, but there's so many things that Square have. Like Square Enix are massive. They have a huge amount of studios and developers and people that they publish. And so, we could see Hitman. We're not saying Hitman. No, we're not saying Hitman. It's cancelled. But we could see lots of different things. We know for certain we're going to kind of see Shadow of the Tomb Raider and Kingdom Hearts and maybe Final Fantasy VII, but that's Dragon Quest and things like that. So like, they have got enough to fill the show. That seems pretty likely.
Yeah, and if we ever are going to see Final Fantasy, the ever being in big capitals there, we're probably going to see it this year. Like it feels right, especially with Square having a conference. And yeah, you're totally in line with a huge amount of our comments. Basically, every one of the comments that we got for this week's episode said we want to see what that Avengers game is. Remember as well that this isn't just an Avengers game. This is like the whole MCU. So like, it's been rumored that Spider-Man for PS4 is a big part of this MCU of games. But yeah, I think this is probably the year we see that game, and probably the year we see Final Fantasy. But you're right, Square Enix are so big they could announce, like, they have everything from Dead Rising to, as you say, Nier Automata to Kingdom Hearts to Just Cause to Tomb Raider, and so much stuff that's also not hugely relevant at the minute in the gaming space. So it's very hard to nail down where they're going. If that rumor is true of Xbox getting Nier Automata, that's probably when we get news of this, but that kind of remains to be seen. All right, your next one is Sony. Now, Sony this year... Sorry, no, it's not. Your next one is Ubisoft. Ubisoft, this will be the first year in quite a number of the years that Ubisoft will be doing a conference without the threat of the aggressive takeover by the company whose name I forget in a minute. So let's get in to the predictions. My first prediction is a big Far Cry 5 update. I think it's probably a standalone update. If you haven't finished the game, I'm going to share a spoiler with it for the next 10 seconds. Lewis, I expect you to close your ears because it's a massive spoiler, so don't listen to this. If this happens, I expect it to be set after the nuclear holocaust at the end of the game, but without making that clear in the conference. I think it's going to be something like Blood Dragon, but with a heavier, more serious, more Far Cry-based tone. My second prediction is a tease, but nothing more, just a tease of the next Assassin's Creed game. There's no trailer, there's no gameplay, but maybe there's like a tease of the setting or some of the people working on it, or we see Aya for the first time since Origins, something along those lines.
I can see it's just like a kind of, we're making it, it's going to be next year, so it's, it's still a year out. Maybe they even say as much. Because I think they know now that people are going to be like iffy on them if they're making a game every year. And yeah, like I think that's quite likely that they kind of go, it's Greece or it's China or it's something.
Yeah, the way I'm thinking about them doing it is like it's the title comes up and then behind it the setting fades into view, and then sort of between those two, Aya's there in her like official assassin's costume, and then it's like cool, next thing.
Okay.
My final big old prediction is the next Splinter Cell game is finally announced, and it's going open world. Think of it like the Splinter Cell of Phantom Pain. The Phantom Pain of Splinter Cell, sorry.
I mean... well, I mean, so my first one is that we do see Splinter Cell. It seems fairly likely to happen. I don't think that Ubisoft want to kind of play into their trope, their meme anymore.
Yeah.
So I'd be a little bit... I think that they probably want to avoid making more open world games. I don't know. I think it's something that they're kind of known for, and it's like doing it some more might get them a bit of negative press. I don't know.
I think they've shown over the last sort of 9 months that they can stray from their own sort of stereotype of what an open world game is, and something, if they did make something in the style of the Phantom Pain for Splinter Cell, that would give them the biggest chance to stray from that and show how different they are. So I think there's sort of chances for both.
Yeah. So my second prediction is that we see Beyond Good and Evil 2, which we know about. It still exists. It's looking a lot more like a game now. I don't know, like, I think, Ubisoft have the power to kind of make those things fast. So I think that it comes together a lot quicker than we kind of expected. And it actually starts looking like something people want to buy. it's still kind of not really got much to do with the other Beyond Good and Evil. Um, but it looks like it's starting to look like something that's actually really kind of iconic.
And your final?
So we kind of know this one's coming, to be honest with you. But so we see The Division 2. It's just a massive improvement of what the first one was, because the first, I think, let down people, but kind of improved over time. Yeah, I think that's fairly likely. And then beyond that, we maybe they re-advertise some things. I could see this happening, maybe like a re-advertisement of some of the games, like Rainbow Six Siege. Just kind of like going, because Rainbow Six Siege was a game that just kind of died out the door. But then, now we're kind of 2 years later, I think, and it's actually really popular now, and loads of people who play it. So I could see it kind of coming back on stage and then being like announcing maybe like one of the DLC things that they're doing, or some sort of like project. Like, I know that at the moment there's like a Splinter Cell DLC for it, or like missions, and I think maybe they could come out and be like, Rainbow Six Siege, look at this DLC mission, something like that, just to kind of go, it still exists, people play it.
I'd love that if it was just the title, Rainbow Six Siege. Hey, look at this.
Yeah, exactly.
Alongside that, I don't think it's going to be too huge a year for Ubisoft. They've got a solid line of games that they've released fairly recently. I think we've heard it rumoured that we might get a blowout of For Honor again, because that's picked up quite a lot of its community. So, yeah, I think it's going to be a solid conference. All right, your next conference is the PC Gaming Show, a show that's very hard to write predictions for, because it's generally the not most impressive bit of E3. So my predictions are 2 fairly usual predictions and 1 utterly blow your fucking socks off prediction. 1, there will be some talk of drivers. I don't understand PC games. 2, a new VR game or franchise will be announced and shown off. This will be kind of interesting, because VR is still kind of in a weird sunken place about where it goes or where it doesn't, and more support to it shown at E3 would be a good thing. I'm thinking this will be something fairly major as well. And finally, my blow your socks off prediction, Gabe Newell will be somehow involved. Now, I don't think this is like he walks on stage and announces a big game, but maybe he's shown in the conference, maybe he's written something for the conference, maybe he has like a video opener, nothing too incredible, but something that shows that Valve are taking a step closer to games again. They've done that a lot over the last year, and I could kind of see them making a show of it at E3 if they are serious about it.
Okay, all right. So I think we see prediction 1, I guess, is we see NVIDIA's new graphics cards. See, I know a little bit more than you do. So we see Volta come out, but the new mantle. So we see the 11 series, or whatever they're going to call it, the 1,000 series, the 10 million series. They always like to go up. So we see that. Other than that, I don't know. The problem with PC Gaming Show is that it's been slowly increasing in quality. This is like the 3rd or 4th one. So there's only been a few, and the first one was literally nothing. And then I think last year we got Age of Empires and some things that computer gamers are more interested in, some indie stuff. Mm-hmm. And I could see this year us getting maybe even more, especially with the likes of kind of Paradox and some of the kind of PC developers and publishers. But it's really hard to say. I can't just do like a general thing for that one, because it's not something that you can predict that well. Yeah.
Yeah, it's always been, we've always kind of struggled with whether we cover it heavily or not, because the announcements for it aren't bad, as you say. They're not, there's nothing particularly blowout about them, but there's nothing really bad about them either. They are the kind of thing that you should, at least have a presence for. But they're not the kind of thing that blows you away. They're not necessarily what you want out of E3, and so it's always been a slightly difficult one. But yeah, I think that's a good list of predictions. All right, your next show is Sony. Now, Sony is very interesting this year. They've announced that they're not doing a conference in the traditional style. Usually we would expect Sony to come on, have a few deep dives into gameplay, and some big announcements either side of that. This year they're doubling down on the deep dives, instead showing us 4 major games that they have, i.e. Ghosts of Tsushima, The Last of Us 2, Spider-Man, and Death Stranding, and having some third-party announcements either side. With that being said, here are the 3 predictions from myself. My first one is that Red Dead gameplay is shown off. I think one of the big things from third party is going to be Red Dead, and I think it's going to be there on the stage. Number 2, a remake of Crash Team Racing is announced. I'd probably put more money on this one being exclusive, but of course exclusivity is never discussed clearly at E3 because they like to be bollocks about that. So Crash Team Racing is announced and is on the way. My big prediction for this one is that Warner Bros. Montreal will take the stage to reveal the next game in the Arkham Origins trilogy.
Interesting. Especially that one. So we know that Warner Brothers are working on a stealth game, and we've been debating whether Arkham is a stealth game. Like whether it counts. Because if it does, then we know for a fact that they are working on some game with the stealth aspect. So yeah, it makes me wonder.
And they've been quite open about they've been working on DC projects for a while. There was the whole Bruce and Damian set in Blackgate thing. There was the whole Suicide Squad game that seemingly got canned. I don't think they've spent all that time on it not to release a DC game. I also think Warner Brothers are probably not willing to drop the Arkham name just yet. So I think another episode in that trilogy is probably fairly likely. Whether it ties into a whole DC gaming universe bollocks is far more shaky. But yeah, I think it's pretty likely. It was always going to be on Sony's stage if it is announced at an E3 or around an E3. So yeah, I'm fairly semi-confident in that.
Okay. So my predictions. I think we see Devil May Cry 5. This is something that's been rumored for quite a while. It's something that was apparently it's said to have been pushed back from their last previous shows at PSX so that they could announce it because 2017's E3 didn't go down too well for them, mostly because people were wanting big announcements because people were expecting 2015 and 2016 again. And ultimately, the thing is that you've got to appreciate with Sony's point of view at this stage is that people are kind of saying, oh, it's going to be awful now. But at the end of the day, Sony can't just announce games all the time. They have to also, make games and show them off.
Yeah.
And I think, 2015, 2016 were just crazy announcements. And now we're just at the stage where we need to kind of go, here's the game, here's the gameplay. So pushing back a few things just to kind of make E3 more exciting. I think we'll see Devil May Cry 5. I think maybe we see Shenmue 3 because that's meant to have been kind of up and coming and actually is said to have been developed very fast. And it seems like about the right time that we see something major for it. Mm-hmm. There's I think 1 or 2 studios that we don't know what they're up to at the moment. Like Guerrilla. I don't know if we'll see them just yet. But my final crazy prediction is we see the RE2 remake Resident Evil 2. Mm-hmm. It's something that people have been wanting for a long time and something that's been rumored for a long time. They remade Resident Evil 1 beautifully and everyone's kind of saying that's the golden standard of remakes. And I would buy the hell out of a Resident Evil 2 remake.
I think it's super interesting that one of the 4 games that's not being detailed is Days Gone.
Yeah. Well, so Days Gone has got some extended... it's in Game Informer this month.
Yeah.
And so they're leaking information slowly about that. But interestingly, it's releasing next year, not this year. So you kind of have to wonder about it. I don't really know. Maybe I guess the idea will be that they show it off a lot more at PSX. I can see that being the case. I think they know that it's kind of... I think that, although we've kind of got the developers of Days Gone, kind of Bend Studios and it coming out being this is the game that we want to be our kind of game to make us stand out. But I think that Sony believe that they're probably not quite as... I think Sony know that, if you were going to list their games, Days Gone would be, somewhere near the bottom. And, that's not to say that that's bad. It's just that it's going to be kind of a 7.5 to an 8.5 as opposed to, Sony have kind of consistently been above that for most of, the gen, apart from Knack. So there's a lot of things that, are up there. And I think Sony know that Days Gone isn't up there.
Yeah.
People are paid to look at, Reddit and stuff. And I think they know that it's not being as well received.
Yeah, I agree with you. Lots of our comments wanted details on Death Stranding. People are saying that it's looking to come out around 2018, 2019 because Kojima has teased something about it being released before the year that Akira is set, which is long-winded to say the least, but there you go. I think we'll probably see gameplay of Death Stranding this year, especially if they're putting such a focus on the deep dive into it. I don't know what the hell that looks like because
Yeah,
I don't
definitely.
even know that Kojima knows what that looks like at this point. I'm surprised he's still not like building an office.
Well, this is the game that, like, I think I remember them saying is like when he first kind of pitched it, he had to spend a long time explaining what the game was. Is the way it's kind of worded. It was like, like, how is this a game? And it's like, it's not interesting. It's not like a high hopes for it when it's like that. But I'm so interested to see what it is.
I hope that the game is just 2 hours of gameplay and the rest of it is 10 hours of a cutscene in which every shot is triple edited just so you know how fucking important it is.
All right.
And your final show of E3, at least confirmed at the minute, there may be more conferences to come out, and we'll explain why we did this week right at the end, is Nintendo. So let's show off some of those predictions. My first prediction is that we get a new Star Fox game announced. Yeah. I think it's time. Nintendo have been pretty good about taking a lot of the franchises that were fucking trampled to death on the Wii U and like giving them new life on the Switch, and we've seen that happen especially with like Kirby and Yoshi and Mario obviously, and Zelda and their partnership with Ubisoft. So I think this is probably in line. It's been 2 or 3 years since Star Fox, so it's probably about the right time to kind of move that IP forward. And it will allow you to continue to use motion controls and all the kind of stuff that the Switch is fancy for, as well as just the portable gameplay. So, yeah, I think that'll happen.
All right.
Number 2, Smash Brothers is talked about in some detail. The good thing, though, it's not a port of the Wii U game. It's a new game built from the ground up for Switch.
Yeah, okay.
And my crazy prediction, the next Pokemon game that was teased last year is shown off in full. It's a 3D RPG, much like Pokemon Generations, with all the gen of Pokemon and the new one to come out on the Switch early next year.
Okay. All right.
Your giggles have me worried.
So I'm still in this place where I'm like, I don't know how much faith I put in Nintendo. Mostly because like the Wii U era went quite badly for them in terms of like one, just releasing kind of quality games, and like things were very like spread out. And the interesting thing about their current situation is they've literally like they cannot beat their first year, right? There's nothing that they can release. Like Pokemon probably comes close, but like in terms of there's very little they can release to beat Mario and Zelda together. And I don't think that they're going to be like firing all cylinders for a while. So my first prediction, and it's what's the word? It's just one, I guess. Is it's massively disappointing. I think like we basically only see Smash.
Ooh, okay.
With maybe one, maybe Star Fox is announced, but no one wants it. It's a new 3D Star Fox game, like Star Fox Adventures, and literally nobody wants it. My hopes aren't high.
Really?
Yeah. We see, but I'll say if I start the third one, but maybe you're right. Maybe for we do see Pokemon Switch. Maybe, like they have a lot that they could bring out. That's the thing. Like Animal Crossing is another one that's possible. Switch and a few other things. I don't know. I don't have like the thing is, I honestly like Nintendo is such a wild card because they have a lot that they could bring.
Mm-hmm.
They're also not necessarily known for constantly bringing out good things, as opposed to say like big hitters now and then.
Yeah,
but I think that's the thing is that Nintendo, and the problem with the kind of Nintendo ecosystem in general is that Sony releases say these big things, but then there's all the other normal releases throughout the year. And the problem Nintendo always has is that they tend to only have their big things.
Yeah, I know what you mean. They've been very reliant on a couple of franchises for a long while, and even the new franchises that they brought in, they've then become reliant on. Like when Splatoon first came out, it was like, oh wow, this is really interesting and very different. And now every year there's a hit of Splatoon content, and it's kind of a shame because it makes you wonder if they can build a new IP in a way that's not Mario or Zelda focused.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm kind of short on Nintendo.
That's cool. Do
But
you?
yeah.
I'll ask you questions for a final prediction instead. Do you think we hear anything from Metroid?
Oof. No, I don't think we do. I think it's still quite far out. Um, like, so far we've only had a title screen, and that kind of suggests that it might even be like pre-production. Because I'm fairly sure like one of the first things most studios do when they like pitch a project to like
A
publishers,
publisher.
developers,
Hmm.
one of the first things they do is make like a short video that kind of encapsulates what that game is.
Yeah, they'll make like a tone trailer.
Yeah, and I think like the fact that we kind of haven't seen that either kind of makes me think that it's not even there yet,
Mm.
even as like kind of a fully kind of fleshed out concept. So I think it's a while before we see it.
Do you think we hear anything from Virtual Console?
No, no. So here's the thing: Virtual Console is a very requested feature,
Mhm.
and like if anything would make me buy a Switch at this point, it would be that because I have like a big stack of GameCube games and some Wii games that I'd love to play. Um, I don't think we do. I think like maybe they kind of announced they're doing more with um, the online service than what they announced earlier. But instead of like anything exciting, they announced it's SNES games now, and everyone kind of goes, "Yay, SNES games!"
So those are our conference predictions. Now we've got a couple of just sort of off to the side might happen around E3 predictions. Firstly, a little bit about why we've done it this week. Usually we do our predictions like right before, and the problem with doing them right before is that everything has leaked or been announced by that point. E3 is very hard to announce a thing at these days because there's so much focus on it. So over the next couple of weeks you're going to see so many game reveals, and it goes to be shown because Rage is being revealed the day this podcast comes out. In fact, you might even know about it whilst we're predicting it. So we thought we'd do this early to try and sort of jump on the hype train a little bit earlier in I don't know, like in the hopes that we can be a little bit more accurate and a bit more interesting with it. Also, if the audio quality is a bit worse this week, I've had to shift myself around the room because I'm quite ill. So sorry, I'll try and clean it up as best I can. But thank you for sticking with us. Let's go to the quick side predictions now. These are for me. They're all a bit mental because they're not like based on one particular conference, so they're all a bit wow if that happens. Firstly, I think Rocksteady probably reveal their new game sometime soon. This is one of those ones that if they do it, I don't know about Montreal, and if Montreal do it, I don't know about Rocksteady. But it's been like 3-4 years since we heard from Rocksteady, really, and they're going to have a huge amount of work done on whatever the IP is. I think it's probably something new, but yeah, I think we'll hear from them.
So do you think we'll see Superman or something else?
I don't know.
'Cause that's the long rumor that's been around, held up by the Batman games as well.
One of the things I'm quite excited by at this point is that really we don't like Rocksteady could announce anything. Like a lot of people are expecting them to announce Superman, but I think a lot of people would be happy with them if they announced their own IP or if they announced a different superhero game or a different DC game. And they're tied to Warner Brothers, so they're making something, probably something that's tied to a film somewhere. But like, I could maybe see them making a Harry Potter game. I could maybe see them making a Lord of the Rings game. Like, I don't necessarily think they have to be tied to DC, and I think that's the most exciting thing about them at the minute. So
Yeah, I'd like to see them set loose as well. I think like it is something I would love to see them do their own IP, and go off and make like what Guerrilla did with the Horizon and just turn around and be like, here's this like amazing game.
yeah,
And Rocksteady have a certain quality that we can debate about Arkham Knight, but a certain quality that I think like they could go out and make a game as good as that.
I mean, like,
I mean, I guess they might already is the point, but
You
yeah.
you joke, but like you do have to give them respect that like they came from a studio that literally had one shitty game on the PS2 to being probably some of the most respected storytellers in gaming in 3 games. Like that's big shit, man. And Arkham Knight, people like it, people dislike it, but you've got to say that like the attempt was a bigger thing, and I really look forward to seeing what their next bigger step is.
Yeah, okay.
Number 2, I think this is, if not likely here, I'll maybe put it into the Game Awards or something, but I think Telltale are going to make a new series and it's going to be on Black Mirror.
Okay.
Years ago, if not a year ago, around that time, Charlie Brooker and them had a discussion over Twitter. Telltale basically said, hey, we'd love to make Black Mirror the video game. And Charlie Brooker is a huge advocate for video games. He's huge on it. If you've ever watched a video game show on Channel 4, it's probably been written by Charlie Brooker. There are many, many podcasts and situations that he's supported in. He turns up to the BAFTA Gaming Awards every year. He's a huge advocate for video games. I could totally see this happening. I think it's a perfect fit for both of them, and to get his name on a video game is the kind of thing that Charlie Brooker would like. So, I think that's probably fairly certain. Not certain, but like fairly realistic at this point.
And is it kind of one long story, or is it kind of like little stories?
Oh, probably little stories, like vignettes. Because I think also that would give them time to kind of fix the Telltale problem. Like, they could almost do it like a running thing. Like, maybe it's not a 5-episode series. Maybe it's just like, hey, in 3 months, episode 2 drops. Because that would totally work. Like, you get a little bite-sized bit of Black Mirror and then puff on to the next thing.
Yeah, okay. I could see that. And it's something that could work really well if, like, it kind of... They put, like, different endings and kind of different kind of things you can explore in that world.
Yeah, because one of the problems they have is that, like, no matter what options or stuff you choose, like, they have to lead on to the next episode, right? You can't kill Bruce Wayne in episode 2 of Batman because he's got 3 more episodes to go through.
Yeah, you could. No, this is somewhere where it's somewhere where I disagree with the Telltale model. Because I think, like, although we can shame David Cage, like, you can die in Heavy Rain and, like, completely ruin the game. And, like, Until Dawn's fairly similar. So, you know, like, at least this would allow that kind of realness to it. You know, you could lose at this situation and not be game over, but be this is your ending.
Yeah, that's kind of what I mean. Is like they could really explore a much more branching paths thing. Because like if you started the game up and you were like, no, I don't like that idea for technology, I don't want to pick that up, they'd be like, okay, you didn't. That was your story, and I think that would be super fascinating.
Yeah, definitely.
My third prediction. I don't know that this is going to happen, but if ever it were to, I think this year or next would be pretty good for it. I think we will probably eventually see a Deep Silver conference. They have a huge amount of games on the burner at the minute, like a huge amount, and they keep buying studios and games. And I think they probably need that space to talk about them. Like, we know Dead Island 2 is still being worked on. We've got Darksiders 3. We've got the stuff they're doing with THQ Nordic. We've got Red Faction Remastered and all the studios, all the IP that they bought basically with THQ at this point. We've got Saints Row, wherever that is, if it's still happening, if it's alive, if there's another game, which I think there probably will be. And then they've got all the stuff before that, like all the stuff that Deep Silver was responsible for basically before they came THQ. I think we'll probably see them, if not have a conference, take up a major space in E3. If not this year, then next. And I think this year would make a lot of sense for it.
Okay.
And my final prediction, totally unrealistic. I do this every year, but I really want it. And Platinum Games have said this week that they're working on a major new action IP that could turn the genre on its head. So fuck it, why not? That leak from March is absolutely real. Vanquish 2 does exist, and just to add the sort of cherry on top of the cake, it's exclusive to Xbox.
All right, okay, I'll go through mine. So we'll start with the most likely. I'm going to say not that. I think, you know what, Vanquish 2, but it's exclusive to PlayStation. Because I have to wonder.
It genuinely scares me how realistic that is.
I mean, you have to think that like Platinum, Microsoft haven't helped themselves in that situation. I can't imagine Platinum are going like, oh, I really look forward to the next time I work with Microsoft.
Now, okay, yes, but the talk at the minute and since March, I think, God, when was Scalebound cancelled? Was it last year?
Yeah.
Fuck. The talk since then is that they are still working together because they didn't deliver that game. Like, the talk is that didn't end the partnership, it just ended Scalebound. And I don't see Platinum making... Like, I think Scalebound still exists somewhere. I think it's probably a game that comes out in a couple of years' time, or maybe even starts the next gen. But I don't think it's Platinum making it, because they wouldn't give the same doomed IP to the studio that doomed it. I can't see them working on a new IP, because it seems like the kind of thing that's a problem. So rejuvenating an old one makes a lot more sense if this is the case. Vanquish would be a big one to go for, obviously, but they're not going to go for, like, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle games, especially because they lost the license, but like also the Transformers games or Bayonetta, those all kind of have their flags in the ground. Of the IPs that they could pick up from Platinum, Vanquish makes the most sense. It's still hugely unlikely and hugely unrealistic, but like of the unrealistic things, there is some logic to it.
Okay. So I think we see Darksiders 3. I think THQ Nordic have said that they're not going to be at E3, and I think that they're lying. In some sense, like whether maybe like we've taken it to mean that nothing's there, but I think maybe there's a chance that stuff is there, just not maybe like their team are there.
Right.
They're not on stage to like announce it, if you like, but they are actually announcing it, but like via video link or something. Not announcing it, but bringing stuff.
It's worth saying, like, I think there's probably going to be a similar situation to what's happening with Randy Pitchford at the minute. Like, Randy Pitchford has been asked a bunch of questions about Borderlands 3 on Twitter, and he's come out and said no to every one of them. Like, did Gearbox sign a marketing thing with Xbox? Nope, never happened. Is Borderlands 3 going to be at E3? Or is Borderlands 3 going to be announced at E3? And he's like, no. And a lot of people have pointed out, like, there's a huge amount of logic that he could use to work around it. Like, Gearbox doesn't publish Borderlands, 2K does, so they wouldn't sign the agreement. So he's still being honest. Like, Borderlands can't be announced yet because, as far as we know, it doesn't exist. Like, it's those kind of little tricks that they could use. So, like, THQ Nordic isn't at E3, but Deep Silver is, and they publish everything they make. It could be one of those little kind of logic fallacy situations.
Yeah. And then so my last is, I feel like we can't really do an E3 predictions episode without putting this in because we know it's there to some extent.
Yeah, basically.
I just feel like it wouldn't be right kind of to go through this list and then not mentioning it. But I think we see Cyberpunk 2077 from CD Projekt Red. It's pretty like 99% likely. If it's not this, then like I don't know, like we've all been misled. Like terribly so. So yeah, we see Cyberpunk. It looks like, well, we know it's first person, we think, which is interesting. It's kind of got a Deus Ex vibe, but looks amazing. I'm very excited to see it. I've been replaying Witcher and kind of seeing like the depth that they were able to make with that game, and the hope is that they can do that with this. So yeah, very excited.
A couple of updates about our comments. Let's go through some of those. Joyan Denton, who posted like 400 predictions, he wants to see more stuff from Dragon Quest XI. Oh, he wants to see something from Dragon Quest XI. He thinks that the Nintendo Direct will have Metroid 4 and Pokemon Switch. He wants to see a Black Ops 4 update and whether there's any details on the Modern Warfare 2 remaster, because there's been a lot of talk about that recently. I wonder if, because there's been discussions about Modern Warfare 2 remaster, like not having the multiplayer, right?
Yeah.
And there's been a lot of talk about Black Ops 4 not having a single player. What if they're the same game?
Yeah.
Like, that would be a good way of saving a lot of pissed off people.
Yeah, and it could work. I should say we're definitely seeing Black Ops 4. It's on the Sony stage. Or something, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it was Sony last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're always with Sony.
And then he also wants Anthem stuff, a new port of Skyrim to something, and and Sonic Forces 2. So that's
Okay.
yeah, exactly. Ryan Shaw bets his bike that some kind of DLC or expansion will be announced for God of War. You said earlier that this is not going to happen. I'm kind of with him. I think they're going to capitalize on the success of that.
It's absolutely not happening. So it's not happening as DLC. There is a chance it could happen as a standalone game. Corey's kind of come out and said. So the guy who made it said,
"Are you on first name terms with him at this point?"
Yeah, me and Corey chat all the time. He's while he's been doing the rounds with everyone, and it's quite impressive the kind of PR work he's done for that game. He's been on every single possible place to be. But he's kind of said no DLC, it's not happening. But he's also said that he plans kind of 5 games for it, and I wonder whether maybe 2 of those games are kind of standalone DLCs. I don't think we're getting anything that's literally DLC.
I 100% don't believe him.
You should listen to him. He's lovely. I'm willing to follow him into a war.
Jesus Christ! You and Corey need some time apart. Jake Shipley says he'd like to see anything about Death Stranding, and he'll be happy. So, well, I mean, we pretty much have that confirmed, my friend. Lots and lots of talk about things. Tayyab Mahmood said that he wants a gameplay trailer for Red Dead Redemption 2. I think that's maybe not realistic for E3, i.e. a trailer. I think we'll either get gameplay on stage or nothing. But
it's tough with them because they've got a history of kind of not presenting at E3.
Yeah.
I think, and especially gameplay. I think gameplay for Grand Theft Auto came out 2 months before the game released. So I don't know with that one.
I think that it's tough because you're right. They've been at E3 a couple of times, but not with gameplay. They announced a PS4 bundle a couple of years ago. And then I think they showed off a bit of the first-person mode when the PS4 came out as well. But they've not had premiere gameplay. That being said, I also think they know that Red Dead won't sell as intrinsically as GTA. It will sell, and if they do the right thing with the PR and the gameplay reveal, it will easily sell GTA numbers. But right now, I think they're at a stage where they know that people are far less willing to just dive into the IP. And I think E3 could be the right kind of place for them, especially as we know the marketing's with PlayStation, and we know that their approach this year is different with more deep dive kind of situations. So I think giving them the space they want on stage is the kind of thing that's more likely to bring them to E3.
Yeah, and I guess you could argue that we've had enough Red Dead kind of cinematic trailers.
Yeah.
At this stage, and I don't think it would be we had one very recently, which makes me kind of think that we probably won't be getting another one at E3. And if we do know they're at E3, you put those 2 things together, it seems likely we are going to get gameplay. Yeah, maybe you're right.
Rob McLaughlin, friend of the show again, says PS5 rumors? ?
So I'll talk about this. So PS5. Thanks. I think basically the biggest confirmation of PS5 is the sense that they are doing this deep dive kind of situation. Essentially, they're kind of going, we're not announcing anything big, temper your expectations, because this is the end of the cycle, not this year necessarily, but this is kind of us winding down. The next kind of, the things we're showing you here are literally 2019 and 2020, and then late 2020, PS5's announced and it comes out. I'm not saying it's end today. So we see PS5 in a few years' time, a couple of years' time. But the fact that they're kind of not announcing much new kind of seems to suggest that we are kind of going that way.
So I'm torn because I totally see what you mean. And actually, when you put it like that, it makes a lot of sense. It's here's the big tent poles. This'll keep you fed for this generation. But that still gives us an E3 where there's nothing. That still gives us 29 E3 where they won't have the PS5 announced. So I am almost tempted to say that this is you've actually really convinced me on that. It probably is the last big PS4 E3. And then maybe 2019 is the first hey, look, we're developing all these IPs, but we won't tell you what they come out on. Wink, wink.
Yeah.
the only way I could possibly see them talking about PS5 this year, and actually, like with the whole deep dive thing, maybe is them doing a Scorpio.
Yeah.
Like, is them saying, here are like the 4 games and Red Dead and a couple of other third parties, and here's your one last thing, and maybe it's just like a box, a controller, PlayStation. Like, it's just, hey, this is coming.
So, like, another theory that I kind of talked to you about, and something that could very easily be not true.
Sorry, I've had a brainwave. Carry on.
Okay. So another thing that I kind of thought about is that Sony could release the whole rumors could be that Sony are actually releasing like a PlayStation 4 Ultimate, if you like, a version of the PS4 that kind of outdoes the Xbox One X just by a little bit, or enough that they can kind of break Xbox marketing. Because I think one of the problems is that at the moment Xbox's marketing is being the best graphics, the best user experience, and I think if Sony would release a console that it wouldn't even need to sell, it would just have to be a thing that exists, and that would kind of help undo Xbox's marketing. But it would be a very kind of mean move, if you like. It's not like a friendly move. It's more just kind of going like, trying to kind of push them away. And I could see it happening. I really could, but I don't know.
So I had a small brainwave there, and I don't think PS5 is anytime soon. But the more we talk about this, the more actually they might be gearing for that. One of the big criticisms against Sony, one of the big things that Microsoft has over Sony at the minute is compatibility. They've talked a lot about how everything's going to be backwards compatible, about how everything's going to be forwards compatible. And I wonder if you start to see Sony talk about forwards compatibility with these 4 games. Because if they're like, here's Death Stranding gameplay, yeah, it looks amazing, all of this will play on whatever you own. Like, that's their way of kind of very subtly saying, Death Stranding is not a PlayStation 4 game. But, not exclusively anyway. Like, It's their way of kind of starting the ball rolling on, like, this is the kind of thing we're aiming towards.
What if like they show off the gameplay and it's like suspiciously good, like not even like E3 downgrade, like it starts and it's like this is literally actually made with the PS5 in mind or something.
The question is like, what could they show that would make us think that though? Because like
there's possibilities. There is.
Like we're so used to E3 being a bit overhyped and being a bit like the game will never look or play like this, that it would. To actually suggest a next generation from gameplay alone, it would have to look... I don't know. I feel like this generation is only just hitting the stride of what next gen is. Like, Far Cry, to me, is the first game that I've played where I'm like, okay, this is a this gen Far Cry game. And that happens all the time with generations. Like, we get better with hardware and better at working the kinks out and really being efficient for them. But because of that, like you think, if I'd shown you God of War 4 at this year's E3... you wouldn't have said, like, oh, that's a PS5 game. But it's incredible. Like, what would they have to do that?
Yeah, I see what you mean. You're not wrong, actually. Like, I played through God of War, and it is, like, graphically to a point where, well, in some sense it stands out, So I don't really know where they could go from that. You have a point. I don't know.
The only thing could be, like, a different style of gameplay, like a brand new thing. Which I guess
a lot of it's more. Okay, more is like kind of the key thing that kind of fixes it is that like, we see like 100 versus 100 battle and it's literally every character unit is fully detailed. Every effect is possible to be seen at the same time on the screen. Maybe it's like magic and there's huge effects everywhere, particle physics and explosions and everything's kind of like on screen at the same time and it's real time and something like that. I could see Ghost of Tsushima going that way if that's kind of like if that's what we see, then that would suggest that maybe it's something higher than the PS4. I could see it happening. You do actually. I wasn't really thinking about the forward compatibility thing, but I could kind of see them going, kind of like beating Microsoft at their game in some sense because Microsoft have said it, but not actually really had the time to action on it.
Yeah.
But if Sony kind of turn around and go, actually, we're doing it too, and it's there, and it's coming out, and it's done, or just like that, then it would very much turn the tables on Microsoft.
Yeah, I don't think it would turn the tables because,
Well, I guess they don't need to turn the tables.
well, yeah, but also like I don't think it would turn the tables because I don't think them saying the next PlayStation is going to be better than the current Xbox is all that impressive. Like,
Yeah,
nobody is expecting the Scorpio to outpace the PS5, and if it does, then the tables are getting turned hugely. What I think it would do is force Microsoft's hand next year because we don't know where that console is. We know it's probably in development. There's been a bunch of hostings and listings that have said next gen, but that could mean a lot of things, especially with them going towards like more cloud stuff. We don't really know what that technology is yet. But much the same way that Scorpio forced, because there's a definite argument that Scorpio forced PlayStation to hit out with their software and their IPs. This would force Microsoft to either double down on the Xbox One Scorpio for a year or two more and milk that console for what it's good for, or just go, fuck it, burn the ground down, here's Xbox 2, everything moves forward.
yeah. You do have to wonder because I don't know if the problem is, I guess, is that from our like consumer side, you can probably go and talk to developers and they can say, oh, there's some really like huge limitations in the PS4. There's some huge limitations in the Xbox One.
Oh, yeah,
Maybe
of
there's
course.
huge limitations in the Xbox One X, and um, it's hard to say from our side what that is because we don't really know what it looks like. So if PS5 comes, I don't know, in 3 years' time, and they're running it now on technology that costs £1,000, but they're hoping that in 2-3 years' time that's actually like retail price works out. Then they could show us something that like stands out in a way that kind of God of War stood out on this console. But I don't know, like, because I say on our side of things, we kind of can't really imagine there being much more, I guess.
Yeah. I mean,
But
so
I have to wonder if the people working on the games kind of go, yeah, there's huge limitations and things we want to do.
the two things I can see, the first game at the minute that really makes me think, oh, that's next gen, is the tech demo we saw from Beyond Good and Evil. Because so if you haven't watched it, I'll quickly summarize. Basically, they have a character on screen, and then they zoom out of that character and show a city, and then they zoom out of that city and show its country, and then they zoom out and show that continent, then its planet. Then they zoom out further, and its neighboring planet, and its solar system, and its galaxy, and it's very like No Man's Sky, but they're really trying to direct a story in it. That is the kind of thing that I'm like, that's the point at which we're not making graphics fancy anymore. We're like actually using those graphics to advance what a game is. The other way, and I wouldn't be hugely shocked if they took a risk on this, is if we see a gameplay demo for Death Stranding. It's really cool. It looks interesting. The game's fun, and it ends with somebody taking off a VR headset.
Okay, that's interesting. Interesting concept. Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I think like you raise a point. Beyond Good and Evil, like the whole it's having all of the detail there, and then zooming in or zooming out. But I guess zooming in to like a single pixel, and that single pixel is actually the whole place where, well, maybe not pixel, but if you imagine you zoomed out all the way and you're in like the galaxy, and then you zoom into like that dot in the middle of the screen, and that's the planet, and then you zoom into the dot in the middle of that planet, and you've got your character.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that just isn't possible really right now in that kind of context. So yeah, that's definitely somewhere I could see it going.
But then
That kind of scope of something.
But then there's a huge question of just how sustainable is that? Because like Ubisoft are basically the biggest third-party studio that exists right now, and even they announced Beyond Good and Evil 2, and it looked awesome, and it looked like a full-fledged, wow, this is going to be great. And then they're like, wow, okay, so there's very little meat on the game at the time they announced it. Like, imagine trying to ask anyone that Deep Silver owns to make a game on that scale. Like, if that happens, the middle is going to fall out again so quickly. But more consoles will happen, man. So E3 is going to be so exciting this year for games. Like, I just genuinely feel like this is going to be a really good E3. But I think also, and I hadn't thought about this, but there might actually be a lot of politics involved in this E3. Like, there's going to be a lot of kind of signposting of like where we are at the minute, especially mid or starting to reach the last trimester of a generation. And man, what a marketplace we're in. Like, we did not think a year and a half ago that Nintendo would be this healthy, that Microsoft would still be this unhealthy, that Sony could continue it. Like, fucking Atari's coming back, and they don't seem to be doing a terrible job yet. Like, this year is going to be so interesting, and we cannot wait to share it with you. If you're listening to this on iTunes, we're going to be explaining in a couple of weeks how we're going to do E3, because we don't have the money to afford a full iTunes feed at the minute. We have to kind of work around it, but we are going to cover every conference. So we'll talk about that a bit later. If you're joining us for E3 on YouTube, we're going to react to every conference. As soon as it's finished, we're going to record, we're going to upload straight quickly, right away. And we should be up much, much faster than we've ever been before. Last year, it took us about 4 hours to upload every show. This year, it'll take us 5 minutes. So we will be there soon after it finishes. We're also going to be streaming video games. We're going to be playing on Mixer and Twitch. We're going to be all over the shop and probably getting quite drunk as we do it. Big thumbs up there. So thank you so much for joining us. Post your predictions in the comments if you get the chance to. We'd love your thoughts. And we're going to mark ourselves on our predictions at the end of E3. Thank you so much to all the wonderful people who got involved and gave us some thoughts to this show. We love doing episodes where we get people like you involved, and I'd love to do more of it. If you like this show, please feel free to like it and subscribe to it so that we get out in front of a few more wonderful people and they don't miss what we publish every Monday at 6:30 or much, much earlier that day on iTunes. We're on Facebook, we're on Twitter, we're on iTunes, we're on YouTube, we're at Games Upcast in all of those things. And also we've published an open source E3 World Clock, so that if you need to know the time schedules for stuff as it happens in different cities around the world, there's a spreadsheet on our page. We'll post it as the pinned post that you can check, and everything is there compared. And if you spot any problems, we'll give you access to fix it. So thank you. Thanks. See you next week for our 100th episode. And happy E3, everyone. See you in a few weeks.